Okay, we're back. And again, as we talked about in the announcement, we're going to be looking at radiology, nuclear medicine, and imaging. Let's have a look. Turn off my video. There we go. And again, there's some terms. Some of these you may need to go back and review. Osmolar, intravascular optical coherence, all these other different types of things, but they're pretty straightforward. And if you want to succeed in coding, always have available and up-to-date medical dictionary. There are, in fact, new terms that come out from time to time. And again, there's a whole section in the book. And again, the same 7 characters. A lot of the first 4 will be given to you in the alphabetic index, as we've seen. A lot of these have qualifiers, some do not. And again, one of the things you have to pay attention to, a lot of the diagnostic imaging have not only a qualifier, but have contrast. So please make sure that you take a look at those. And then, of course, we have left and right. When we're looking at the PCS coding book, we'll take a look at procedures that are upper, lower, and the dividing line for the upper versus lower is the diaphragm. And again, the exoskeleton, of course, is the torso. And the non-axillary skeleton is comprised of the extremities. In other words, the arms and the legs. So rather than go through the rest of the slide deck, I thought I would just give you 2 examples and how we get them. So let's take a look. Again, X-ray without contrast to the right ankle. So what do we have? Well, as we talked about in the announcement, if we go X-ray, we're going to go to plain radiography. Let's have a look at that. Again, always a good idea to start with the alpha. So we go X-ray in our book. What does it tell us? Well, as we talked about in the announcement, see plain radiography. So let's go ahead and do that. And here it is. Plain radiography. Everything's in alpha order. And then here we have, so BQ0G are the first 4 characters for the X-ray of the ankle. The rest of it is actually fairly straightforward. Okay, so here we are. This was we already got imaging, non-axial, in other words, extremities, lower bones, plain radiography. It's our right ankle. Our example had no contrast. There was no qualifier in either character 6 or 7. So it is B, Q, 0, G, Z, Z, Z. Those are our 7 characters. Okay, here's another one for you. Ultrasound of the urethra. Well, how do we get started? Let's have a look. All right, so the first thing to do, if you're new to this, is to go to the ultrasound, right? And again, Right up here, we have ultrasound, ultrasonography, urethra, and it gives us the 5 characters of BT45ZZZ. But as we know, we always check it in the table. Once people are very experienced, they'll go right to the table and code in PCS, but I would strongly advise that before you do that, you make sure that you have looked up these terms in the alpha. So here it is: B for imaging, T, urinary system, ultrasound, urethra, and of course, you'll note no qualifiers, no contrast. So that is our complete code. I hope you found that helpful, and we'll see you online. Have a great week and stop by office hours if you have any questions. Bye now.